Well, everybody, thank you for joining us today. And lastly, thank you very much for the very kind and very generous introduction that you provided. We have a lot of material to cover today, and I don't want to waste any time at all. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in, and we're going to start by doing a little bit of an experiment. And what I'm going to do is I am going to have you look at these 3 emails that are on your screen here. And each of these emails were designed by top ranked agencies, all award-winning agencies. And they are all the same email, just different versions of that email. So I would like for you to all look at these 3 emails. And what we'll do, let's see if this works. I'd like for you to vote on which email you perceive to be the most optimized. Is it number 1? Is it number 2? Or is it number 3? So go ahead and take a look at each of these 3 emails, number 1, number 2, number 3. And why don't you use the little chat window there and go ahead and type in number 1, number 2, number 3. Give everybody a moment or two to go ahead. All right, so here's the responses are coming through. I've got some 2s, I've got some 3s, I've got some 1s, 2s, 3s. Okay, it looks like we're kind of all over the board here. It looks like some of the responses are still coming in. Well, as you look at these emails, what I want you to think about is what did you zone in on when you were trying to determine which email was most optimized? Was it the design? Was it the offer? Was it the amount of white space on the page? Was it the use of certain kind of graphics or buttons? Is it the incentive that's offered to save by purchasing an item today? What are the things that you looked at? What was the criteria you used to determine whether or not each of these emails was optimized? Well, each of these 3 emails were tested against each other, and what we found is that all of them underperform when compared to the control. So whoever voted for number 2, congratulations, you picked the best of the worst. It generated a negative 19% increase in click-through rate. Those who voted for number 3, it generated a negative 34% increase in click-through rate. So congratulations, that's the second best of the worst. And whoever voted for number 1, it was the worst performing compared to the control. Now, I kind of rigged this a little bit because I didn't show you what the control looked like. But that's okay, because the key thing that we wanted to understand here is that when it comes to optimizing email campaigns, best practices are not enough. When it comes to optimizing email campaigns, we need a rigorous methodology that we can apply. And so what I want to do is I want to share with you today something that honestly has changed my life, and it is the discovery of the Meth Labs email optimization methodology. So let me give you a brief overview on Meth Labs. Meth Labs is one of the largest, actually, in fact, is the largest optimization institution in the world. They work with some of the largest brands that you recognize, from companies such as Google and Apple and Microsoft and Cisco and a number of different consumer brands. And what they do is they work with these groups and help them to optimize the online sales funnel. And through the course of their research, they have performed over 1,300 different individual experiments. They've tested over 1 billion different emails, 10,000 different conversion paths. They've interviewed over 500,000 decision makers that work at different marketing organizations. And they've put on all these conferences and clinics throughout the country and around the world, sharing some of this research and methodology. So what we're going to do is we're going to first ground ourselves in the fundamental Meth Labs theory as it relates to email optimization. And the first key principle is this: email is a relational medium. People don't buy from emails, they buy from people. We must conceptualize an email as part of a sequenced conversation. When we do business with people, we enter into a conversation, and email is evoking a mental conversation that takes place within the mind of the person you're sending your email to. And the goal of this conversation is to move people through a series of what we call micro yeses that lead to a macro yes. So what do we mean by this? Well, when we talk about marketing, we often think in terms of a funnel. And a funnel is really a very useful analogy as it relates to marketing, because all of our marketing should be designed to move people to a decision point. But there's a problem with how we perceive the funnel, and that is that it distorts reality. Gravity is not pulling people down through the center. Gravity is actually pulling people out of the bottom. And so we have to take this funnel, we have to flip it upside down, because we have to understand that in most of our marketing efforts, we're getting fractions of the whole that are converting and becoming a success. So when we look at the funnel like this, it really looks more like a mountain that people are climbing. And instead of falling down through the center, they're actually climbing up the side. So as we look at this, we have to think about, how do we get people to the climax of the mountain? How do we get them to that ultimate yes? And that ultimate yes may be a sale, or the ultimate yes may be a donation, or an ultimate yes may be an advocacy action. So whatever we define as our macro yes, we have to think in terms of the series of micro yeses that lead to the macro yes. So if we think in terms of the context of email marketing, first, somebody has to open our email, they have to click on our email, they have to arrive at our landing page. Once they get to our landing page, maybe they have to go through a series of forms and different devices that they need to navigate in order to give a donation to our organization. So we see that there's a series of micro yeses that lead to the macro yes. So let's review key principle number 2. The essence of marketing is the message. You can't control the prospect. You can't control the people that come to your website, but what you can control is what information you put on that website. You can control the message. And it is the message that attracts people and pulls them towards this ultimate macro yes. So in the context of this funnel analogy, it is the message which is the force that propels people through the series of micro yeses that leads to the macro yes. And the final point here is that the essence of the message is the value proposition. The value proposition. At each stage of the conversation, our goal is to tip the scale from cost-heavy to value-heavy, from negative to positive. So if we look at it in this context, it represents more or less like a fulcrum. And on a fulcrum, on either side of this fulcrum, we have the value force and the cost force. And so the net force of the value proposition is the actual force of the cost of the value minus the actual force of the cost. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to, at each of these different steps along the way, at each of these different micro points, we are trying to take something that's cost heavy and value small and turn it to value heavy, cost small. Let me do that again. At each step in the process, what we're trying to do is we're trying to mitigate the force of the cost of taking a specific action and increase the force of the value for taking a certain action. And so the rest of the day today, we're going to spend applying this heuristic formula. And again, this is something that has been developed through the sciences department of Meth Labs. And it's not a mathematical equation, but what it's designed to do is help us to focus our attention on the right things that actually move people to make a decision and say yes to our macro yes offer. So the email marketing effectiveness equals relevance times offer plus incentive minus friction minus anxiety. There's two different components of this. There are value factors, relevance, offer, incentive, and there are inhibitors or cost factors, which are things like friction and anxiety. Our goal is going to be to find ways to pump up the value and mitigate the cost factors, the inhibitors. So let me tell you a story about my very first experiment. So about 5 years ago, I attended the Meth Labs email optimization summit. And I was there because I was kind of reached a plateau in terms of my ability to optimize the work I was doing for my clients. I work with nonprofit organizations primarily in the area of fundraising. And so we do a lot of email messaging, a lot of landing pages and microsites, all designed to get people to be inspired by our vision and to give to the organization so that we can do more good. And so I was working with the George Bush Presidential Center, and I went to this conference, and about 15 minutes in, as they were walking through some of the science and sharing some of this research, my mind was blown. And I remember at the very first break at the conference, I got on the phone and I called my team and I said, hey guys, get ready because we're going to change the way we do everything starting on Monday. I said, you know what? How about we're starting right now? I said, aren't we getting ready to send out those acquisition emails for the George Bush Presidential Center? I said, yeah, those go out tomorrow. I said, great. What I'd like you to do, call the list vendor, tell me we want to split the segment in half, and I want to do an A/B split test. And give me a couple hours. Let me look at this email, and I want to make some changes, and we'll test the control version versus this new treatment that we'll create. And so I spent some time staring at this thing, and I'm looking at all these formulas. They're talking about, how to increase value and reduce friction and anxiety and some of these different psychological factors that go into getting people to say yes. So ultimately, I came back with this treatment. Now, there's one change. There's only one thing that's different between these two emails. And if you can't pick it out, I'll point to it. It's the very, very last sentence in the email, the call to action. That's the only difference between these two. Now, best practices might say, okay, well, only 18% of the people read to the bottom of the email. Only 19% of the people open the email. So, is that really going to make a difference? Making one change to one sentence, the final sentence of an email. Well, we went ahead and set up the A/B split test. What we discovered is that one change led to a 139% increase in click-through, which translated directly into 42% increase in revenue. So at that moment, I was completely sold. I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my career optimizing things. And so we did. And so for a number of my different clients, we did a number of these different tests, and we tested the control versus a treatment, and we'd find, bam, 257% increase in click-through. We tested, two different versions of a message, just testing different design aspects, and we found that, bam, 118% increase in donations, 50% increase in the number of people that took advocacy action. And we tested, end-of-year messages and, making slight changes to the content of the message of what we're communicating, 369% increase in click-through, 121% increase in revenue. And so again, we'll come back to these later, and I'll explain in detail exactly what we learned from each of these different experiments. But the key principle that we have to keep in mind is that optimization doesn't happen on the page. It doesn't happen on the email. Optimization happens in the mind, right? If we believe what Meth Labs says, that every time we're sending a communication, we're entering into a mental conversation with people. And that mental conversation is taking place in their mind. And we have to think about how can we optimize our message in a way that it connects with the thought sequences that are taking place in the mind of our constituent. And so I'm going to share one more concept here, and this is the email messaging sequence. What we need to understand is that when we send a message to somebody and we enter into this mental conversation, that conversation follows a specific sequence that starts at the point where we capture the person's email address, where we have them sign up or opt in to our message. At that point, it begins a journey that we enter into with this person, and it carries through to the very first message we send them. In the message envelope, the to line, the from line, the subject line that inspires them to open. And that sequence carries through to the message body, the copy the email message itself that inspires them to click, and it carries all the way through to the landing page or the website that inspires people to take the specific action. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each of these different phases: email capture, the email message itself, and we'll look at the open side of things and the click side of things, and then ultimately the landing page. And we're going to apply the email marketing effectiveness index. Email marketing effectiveness equals relevance times offer plus incentive minus friction minus anxiety. We're going to apply that to each of these different phases. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with optimizing email capture. When we think about optimizing email capture, again, if we go back to our little fulcrum or our balances model, we have to think about two different aspects. When we ask people for something of value, right, the contact information represents significant value. We don't just give it out willy-nilly to other people. So what we need to think about is how can we increase the value of the offer that's associated with the email sign-up opportunity. So let's get pretty practical here. Let's look at a couple different nonprofit organizations. Some of these you'll recognize. So the first one we'll look at here is the Salvation Army. Now, I spent about 20 minutes on their website trying to find where I could actually give my email address. And surprise, surprise, you actually can't. There is no place that I could find on their website where I can actually give them my email address and enter into a relationship with them. So step one is very simply have an opportunity for people to give you their email address. Okay, that's pretty simplistic. Let's get a little bit deeper. American Red Cross, many of you probably recognize this organization. We'll look at this one, and we'll look at this one as well. Cross-Examine, this is a broadcast nonprofit organization, and we'll look at the two email offers associated with each of these. So let's first look at this scoring criteria, and I'm going to ask you again to help me grade the value of the email offer. We're going to look at two different aspects of these email offers: the desirability and the exclusivity. The desirability, we're going to rank the ideal customer or donor, perhaps, their desire for the offer associated with the email capture. And then we're also going to look at the exclusivity. We're going to look at, is this something we can get anywhere else, somewhere else, or nowhere else? So we're going to look at desirability. Is this something I'd be interested in? And exclusivity, you know, can I get this anywhere else? So let's go ahead and look at the first one, American Red Cross. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight the email sign-up offer here. Upper left-hand corner, it says join us. There's a little box for email. There's a little box for zip code. And there's a little button that says submit. Okay, join us, email, zip code, submit, right? So let's go ahead and look at our scoring index here. To the ideal customer, in this case, it's called the ideal donor to American Red Cross. What do you believe is their desired level associated with the offer based on what they're communicating in that example there? So is this something that you believe that the ideal donor would have 0, which is no interest, 1, which is possible interest, or 2, which is high interest? Again, let me go back to it so you can look at it. Join us, email, zip code, submit. That's all they're telling us about this email offer. So go ahead and in the comments section again, in the little chat window, why don't you go ahead and put in a 0, a 1, or a 2. So we'll look. 0 is no interest, 1 is possible interest, and 2 is high interest. Okay, got a lot of 1s. Looks like a lot of 1s, a lot of 0s, 1s and 0s, 1s and 0s, 1s and 0s. Okay. So let's go ahead and average it. On the high side, we'll give them a 1. So now let's look at exclusivity. Based on what we see here, join us, email, zip code, submit, would you believe that this is something that you could get anywhere else? 0, somewhere else? 1, or nowhere else? 2. 0, 1, 2. Got some 1s, some zeros. Looks like lots of ones and zeros. Again, we'll go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll give them a 1. So if we go back to our little grading scale here, we take these two numbers, we multiply them together. If the total is less than 2, then we probably need to think about how to recraft this offer. So 1 times 1 is 1. Probably not a lot of value associated with this email sign-up offer. So guys, let's go ahead and look at another example here. This one's cross-examined. Again, this is a broadcast ministry organization. Right here in the center of the screen is the email sign-up offer. It says, become an insider, get instant free access to past episodes and extended teaching when you sign up to become a cross-examined insider. We click through, there's a little bit more information. It says, by becoming a CE Insider, you will receive special behind-the-scenes footage, including the making of cross-examine, extended teaching and interviews, an insider sneak peek of a compelling new special, a virtual backstage pass to After Hours with Dell and John, a complete unlimited access to past episodes, a subscription to our content-packed weekly e-newsletter, and much, much more. Okay, so let's go back again to our grading scale here. Remember, we're going to look at, for the ideal customer or donor, in this case, the desirability level. Would this be something that would be of no interest, possible interest, or high interest? 0 is no interest, 1 is possible interest, 2 is high interest. 0, 1, or 2. Okay. Great. Looks like we see lots of 2s. So far, unanimous 2s. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the exclusivity of the offer. Is this something that people could get anywhere else, somewhere else, or nowhere else? 0 is anywhere else, 1 is somewhere else, 2 is nowhere else. Looks like it's virtually unanimous. So it looks like we got 2. We take 2 times 2, that's 4. So we probably have an offer here that has a high degree of desirability and a high degree of exclusivity. Now, is this something that you can take and apply to your own organization? Absolutely. I mean, again, what I'm hoping happens today is that you don't see something new, but that you have new eyes in which to see some of the things that take place on your website and come up with ways that you can optimize them yourself. Because ultimately, my goal is to empower you to go and do some of these things for your own organizations. Really, really cool. Okay, so let's keep moving. I'm going to go quickly through this example, but let me go through an example here of an actual organization. This is a adoption agency here in Dallas. They drive traffic to their website primarily through search engine marketing. When people arrive at the website, they're presented with this. If you need immediate help with an unplanned pregnancy or adoption information, you can register here to access our Adoption Resource Center. So they fill out some information and they can opt in to receive email communication, and they get access to all of this cool stuff in this Adoption Works Resource Center. So pretty interesting offer, interesting way of providing something of value to the audience when they arrive at the website. But let's go ahead and look at how we might optimize that page. So again, looking at our formula, in this case, we're focusing on increasing the relevance of the offer and reducing some of the anxiety associated with the process. So applying this methodology to this page. On the left is the control. So you can see just from even the headline, this landing page is attempting to address 2 different audiences at the same time. Well, there's a problem with that. And the problem is that these 2 different audiences come to the website with completely different motivation sets. So in terms of a strategy to optimize this page, we had to focus more on one audience. So if you look at version B, the treatment version, it's focused more just on people that are looking to adopt. It says if you're considering adoption, we have resources that can help. Well, we already know that, because people are typing in Adoption Resources Dallas into Google to get to this website in the first place. So we're already using what we know about this person to have a relevant conversation. If you look at the 2 pages, they don't look dramatically different. In fact, version B, the treatment page, looks even more simpler than version A. There's a single column layout, bullet pointed copy. There's this big kind of call to action box in the center that says get instant access to free AdoptionWorks resources, including this and this and this. There's a bunch of check boxes. We changed the button from register now to get instant access. Let me ask you a question. Who wakes up in the morning and says, man, I can't wait to register for something today? Nobody does, right? So even our button can convey value if we think about it in this context. So we changed the language instead of register now to get instant access. That's what people actually want. And we added a testimonial at the bottom. So when we did an A/B split test and split the traffic 50-50, so every visitor to the website, every other one got a different version of this page, we saw that those small changes led to a 42% increase in registration rate. So this is ways that we can take this methodology and apply it to our email sign-up opportunities. One more example. One of the things that we can think about as well is ways to increase the desirability of our offer. So this is, last I mentioned, the Heritage Foundation. They've been a long-time client of mine. We do a lot of work together, and they've really become, they've really become almost a research partner. And we've sought out to work together to find new ways of communicating with people online so that we can get better and better and better. They have such an amazing kind of culture of optimization over there that it's just really, it's exciting and contagious. And so this was one of the experiments that we did. We said, what if we were giving away this white paper about Obamacare, and what we decided to do, we said, well, let's create like a little quiz and walk people through the quiz and then present the offer and see if that helps to increase our conversion rate. Maybe we can even make it fun and gamify it in a way. So we created this little microsite called Operation Obamacare. And the way it works is Uncle Sam's sick, Obamacare's making him sick, it's making most of us right now, and we perform this little bit of operation. So brain hemorrhage, it asks this question, you provide an answer, it says yes, you're correct, no, you're not correct, and you go through a series of these questions, and you get to the end, and it says, okay, great, you got 3 out of 6 correct, but here's the thing, Obamacare is not a game. It's a very, very serious thing, and that's why we wrote this very, very serious paper, and we very, very seriously want to send it to you today. And so we've put this offer after this educational kind of tongue-in-cheek fun experience they have. And what we discovered by doing this, first of all, we had 43% of people that went all the way through the quiz. We had 19% of the people that came to the website actually completed the email capture, gave us their email address. Now, if we compare this to the existing model that we have where we were just posting the document on the website and said, hey, you can download this, it's great. We increased our name acquisition by 282%, and if we compare that to industry benchmarks, it was an 850% increase over the nonprofit industry benchmark for email registration capture. So again, just coming up with ways to create relevance and excitement and desirability for our offer are some of the ways that we can increase the number of new email addresses we acquire. So that's on the offer side of things. What about on the cost side of things? How can we reduce the cost, the perceived cost, of giving away something valuable, your contact information? Well, look at this form here for a second. This comes from the Meth Labs research library, and this was a treatment page. So look at this email sign-up offer, and let me ask you, what is the cost of submitting email to this form? You don't have to answer the question, but just in your head, what do you think is the cost associated with filling out this form? Well, it doesn't cost us anything monetarily, right? But what it does cost us is something of value, our contact information. If we think about it, there's probably a scale of value that escalates depending on the kind of information that we request. So we ask people to give us their name, just their name, just my name by itself without any contact information. Probably the cost associated with that is on the lower side of things. We ask for things like email. Well, now we start to increase the perceived cost, or the perceived value in my case, of giving away that information. If we ask for things like phone number, well then, the perceived cost is like, oh man, does that mean somebody's gonna start bombarding me with phone calls? Or, if we ask for somebody's social security number, then, that sets off red flags because they could do a lot of damage with that information. So there's varying levels of cost associated with the information that you request from people when you ask for their contact information. So let's look at some examples of things that we should be thinking about doing. So not this, but this. What's the difference between these two pages here? Look at the amount of information that we're requesting. So in the version on the left, we're asking for a lot of information. The version on the right, we're asking for very few pieces of information. Not this, fill out all this information to request a quotation, but this, name, email, title, phone. Not this, but this. The interesting thing about this example here is that in both cases, they ask for the exact same amount of information, but the orientation of how the information is laid out, it actually looks like it's less. So again, this is not actual cost, it's perceived cost, right? We talk about optimization happens in the mind. Because I perceive that there's less information being asked, the version on the right looks less offensive to me. Okay, so hopefully those are some practical things you can start thinking about as it relates to growing your email list online. So now let's think about, okay, well, how do we get people to open and click on our message? So let's go ahead and look at our formula again. Email marketing effectiveness equals relevance times offer plus incentive minus friction minus anxiety. How do we apply that to inspiring more opens? Well, this really relates to the message envelope, the to line, the from line, the subject line. The to line is who we address it to. The from line is who it's being sent from. And the subject line provides a window into what the content is about. Doing simple things like personalizing the to line with a person's name can increase response as much as 10%. So doing simple little things like that can make dramatic difference when it comes to optimizing your open rates. I want to spend more time focusing on click-through rate because, to be honest, there's a lot more research out there about open rate optimization, and I know the Obama campaign, they had a whole spiel on what worked and what didn't work from an open rate standpoint. But what I do want to focus on is optimizing click-through rates. And this really relates to the message body itself, the message that's being communicated. And there's a number of different things we need to be thinking about as it relates to our message body. The first thing we have to get clarity around is, what is our goal? What is the goal of any email? It doesn't have to, it could be a fundraising email. It could be an advocacy email. It could be a sales email. It could be an invitation email. The goal of every single email, regardless of what the ultimate macro goal is always the same. The goal is to win a click. You can't donate through an email. You can't register for an event through an email. You can't take an advocacy action through the email. You have to do that on the website. So the goal of the email should be always, always, always to inspire a click, okay? So what are some things that we can do to our email? Well, one thing we can do is use an internal subject line. We do a lot of personal kind of emails that look more like letters. So a headline would be kind of weird in that kind of context. So one of the ways that we've gotten around and or enabled to create a headline is by using an internal subject line. Again, it just adds additional relevance to the message and enables you to communicate something of value before you even get into the salutation. The goal of the first sentence needs to compel the reader to read the first paragraph, and the goal of the first paragraph needs to communicate a value proposition. The value proposition must lead people to ultimately to a call to action that's clearly communicated. And that call to action should, by the way, be something that's not, something that doesn't communicate value, like click here. It should be something that actually has a specific action in mind. One thing that I want to spend some time talking about is this idea of relevance. We always want to try to enter into relevant conversations, and if you remember that formula, relevance is the multiplier in the equation. We'll talk about two different kinds of relevance. There's internal relevance. These are things that are applied through segmentation. So this is things that we know about our audience, their personal interests, demographics, personality, different communication styles, their level of engagement, their level of donor, where are they at in the donor life cycle. These are things that we apply through segmentation. So we take this information and compile it in the database, and we're able to begin to break down our list into multiple different groups based on this criteria. The second type of relevance is external relevance. So these are things that are happening outside in the world. So things like seasonality, special events, things that are happening in the news cycle, limited time offers, holidays, even things like weather. Yes, even weather can be a way to start a very relevant conversation with people. And so I want to take you back in time a little bit. February 1st, 2011, I live in Dallas, Texas. Most of the time we don't experience too much of the snow and ice. We did recently. Actually, I was trapped in D.C. for a couple of days, which sucks. But February 1st, 2011, I'll never forget it because I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were in the Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl was in Dallas. And we woke up the week, Super Bowl week, and this is what it looked like outside. Everything was completely frozen and iced over, and I mean, they shut down. I think my office was shut down for 10 days, or for an entire week. Yeah, it was the entire week we were shut down. And so I'm sitting there, working from home, watching my kids play outside in the snow, making snowmen, which was really cool for them because they've never experienced the snow like that. And as I'm sitting there, I got this email. It starts off, hey, Tim, brr, did you make it into work today? Well, I did after an IT 2-hour commute. If you didn't, I bet that work is just piling up. And that's where Creative Circle comes in. Worry about the weather again tomorrow? No problem. A lot of people can work remote, so you don't have to worry about. So this is a creative placement agency. It's a recruiting firm, basically. And what they did is they used something as trivial as weather to engage me in a relevant conversation about their services. I saw this and I thought this was so brilliant. And I was like, man, maybe I do need to think about our staffing needs over the next couple of months. And if I do, I'm probably going to consider these guys just because they treated me like a person and engaged me in a really relevant conversation. So this is an example of using external relevance very, very well. So let's look at another example. A little bit later that same day, I'm sitting there, still iced over, everything's frozen, nothing's going anywhere, and I get this email. The first thing I see is cool off, and I'm thinking, what? And I see a big swimming pool, and there's this fan thing, and it says summer's right around the corner. I'm like, really? Right? It says beat the heat and save, and I'm like, beat the heat? What are you talking? I mean, not only was it the coldest day in Dallas, but it's like the coldest day in the entire country. I mean, everybody was freezing and cold. And I'm scanning through this thing. I'm trying to figure out what this is or why I'm receiving it. It says, in this issue, apparently it's some sort of newsletter that I don't remember ever signing up for. So, it's a good reminder for me just to opt out of that thing and hit the spam button 5 or 6 times just to let them know. Register now for what exactly? Register now. News, now I get that from Fox. Thanks. More about us. Well, you know what? It sure is all about you, obviously, because sales must be really droopy because it's for freezing outside, and you think that I'm just sitting around waiting for ways to spend money, and you send me this. I mean, look, don't do this. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that just drives me crazy. And unfortunately, marketers can be very self-serving most times. We fail to realize that the people that we're trying to communicate with are in fact people. They're not just targets, they're not just numbers in a spreadsheet, and this is the kind of stuff that just absolutely kills your credibility. So again, thinking about ways to communicate relevance through your communications, but using both internal relevance and segmentation, but also thinking about ways to make our message relevant based on what's happening in the world around us. So let's go back and look at some of those examples again, and I'm going to unpack what we learned from some of these A/B split tests. So I showed you the George Bush Presidential Center. This was an acquisition email. The goal of this email is to get new members, new financial contributors to the organization. Okay? So we did the A/B split test, the control on the left, the treatment on the right. I told you that the treatment generated 139% increase in click-through, 42% increase in revenue. So let me just blow up for you those last two sentences, and we'll look at the control and the optimized version. I'll tell you why the other one won. So the original read like this: please accept this invitation to stand with President Mrs. Bush by making a tax-deductible online contribution now. So sounds like typical ask we might make if we're trying to raise money. The optimized version read like this: please accept this invitation to become a charter member of the George W. Bush Presidential Center. Interesting. What conveys a stronger value proposition? Making a tax-deductible online contribution now, or becoming a charter member of the prestigious George W. Bush Presidential Center? Well, it's clear, right? I mean, the cool thing about this, I don't have to guess anymore as a marketer. I can let the market tell me by doing these tests. And we found that by just making that one change to the final sentence, increased our revenue by 42%. Let's look at the other example. In this case, our test, our hypothesis was, what if this email actually looked like it came from a human being as opposed to coming from some sort of email machine? Okay? The version B on the right, the control, got the HTML kind of wrapper all around it. It's what we're used to when we send out our email messages. Version A looks like it came from the person's Outlook account, right? Same exact message in both of these. Exactly the same content, same call to action. Everything is the same. The only thing different is that one version, the version on the left, looked like it came from a person. So when we did this, when we set up this test, we had a hypothesis. We thought that one version or the other would generate a higher click-through rate. That was not the case. In fact, the click-through rate was statistically identical for these two messages. No difference there. However, the people that clicked on the Outlook version were much more motivated to take action. 118% increase in donations, 50% increase in advocacy actions. So the question is, well, why? Why would the people that click on this version be much more motivated? Well, because on some level, subconsciously likely, they believe that this actually came from a person, and so that they were much more motivated to take action rather than the message that they perceived came from some sort of email marketing department, right? So this is the amazing thing about our brains. I mean, and this is why testing, I'm constantly amazed at how often I'm wrong when I test different things, just because our brains are so much smarter than we are, right? I think I read once that neuroscientists estimate that our brains process like 11 million pieces of information every second. And of those 11 million pieces of information, only about 40 are being consciously processed. So that means that the majority of information that we process happens on some sort of subconscious level that we're not even aware of. So it's amazing, simple things like that. This was an email. This was a couple years ago with the Heritage Foundation. This is the first in a series of 12 end-of-year messages. And what we learned from this email, we were going to apply to all the future emails. So this was a pretty big test, because They have a very large email file. We raised a lot of money in the month of December, and so, based on what we learned from this test, we had a lot of potential opportunity to gain. So the control version of the email on the left focused more on issuing a call to action to give. So it had typical end-of-year language like help Heritage reach our end-of-year goal, donate today, give your online gift now. I mean, that kind of language was what the focus of the message was. And then we said, well, okay, if the goal of an email to get a click, maybe we can inspire more clicks by not making the call to action to give an email, but doing that on the landing page, and instead just focusing the email message on getting people to click. So in this test, both the control and the treatment went to the exact same landing page, and there was a video. There happened to be a video on that landing page. So we said, well, let's just focus on highlighting the video. So the treatment, instead of focusing on give a gift, focused on watch the video. We did an A/B split test, 369% increase in click-through on the treatment. That translated to 121% increase in revenue. Let me tell you, folks, that actually made a significant difference in our end-of-year campaign, because not only was that 121% increase in that one message, but that was times 12, because we rolled out what we learned here to all of our future messages, and it made a big impact on our end-of-year giving. So again, little changes to the right areas can make a dramatic difference. Okay, guys, thank you. I know there's a lot of material. We're almost at the end here, but I do want to talk about landing pages. This is a very critical aspect of the sequence, because this is where the conversion actually takes place. And I'm surprised that a lot of organizations don't think enough about how to optimize the landing page. So let's first define what success is. I mean, ultimately, we want to get conversions. So whatever our goal is, it's the total number of goal completions divided by the number of unique visits to the website. This is the ultimate measure of the effectiveness of the complete sequence. So everything from the open to the click to the landing page. This is basically the nexus of all of that. The average for nonprofits, the average donation conversion rate is about 2.72%. That fluctuates from year to year, but it usually hovers around between 2 and 3. So as an optimizer, I'm like, man, that's a huge opportunity for greatness there. What if we can, increase that to 3%, 4%, 5%? There's so much room there to grow. So what are some things to think about? Well, we talked about, increasing the offer. We were looking at email capture optimization. We can also introduce things like incentives, appealing elements that are introduced on the page next to the offer that basically tips the scale in our favor and gets people to take action. But I want to focus and spend some time talking about the biggest thing that kills your donations online specifically, and that is this idea of friction. Friction is anything that causes psychological resistance to a given element in the online donation experience or on the web page itself. So what does that mean? Well, I think the best way to explain friction is to allow you to experience it. So let me show you what online giving should not feel like. And to do this, I'm going to pick on a very good friend of mine, World Vision. Love these guys, longtime donor. They were a client. Great, great, great organization. They're huge, too. They do about $1 billion, over $1 billion a year in revenue. So, I mean, this is a big organization. So surely they do this right? Well, let's look at it. This is a screenshot from one of their microsite campaigns. The purpose of this campaign, by the way, is to raise money. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. The purpose of this campaign is to get donations. So if I came to this website with the intention of giving a donation, where would I go? Well, there's lots of different links and buttons and pictures and different things that I can click on, but, it may take me a second or two, but it's clear. Up in the right-hand corner, there is a donate button. So I click on that, and then it takes me to this page. And all of a sudden, I start to panic a little bit because I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do next. yeah, my eye gravitates to this main center column here, and so the first thing I see is where your donations go. Okay, well that's helpful, but that's not what I want to do. I want to donate. Search for a student or group. Okay, what does that mean? Looking for your page and a question mark. Yeah, I've got a question, right? Search for your page. Click here. So create a fundraising page. Click here. Going over to the right now. Sign up now. For what exactly? Ask your question. Okay, here's my question. How do I donate? Okay, 1-800. How do I donate? Or get more info. Join us Facebook. Okay, all that stuff. I clicked on donate, right? I should be able to donate. Well, believe it or not, down in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a little text link. It says, discover more ways to help. Now, if you are a patient and perseverant person who's very, very highly motivated to give to this organization, you may block off enough time and spend enough time clicking around that you'll find that that's where you need to click. And it takes you to this page. Like, oh my gosh, I've clicked 3 times and I've got nowhere. But okay, at least I see now something that resonates with my intent to give. So I click donate now. It takes me to a different website, different look and feel. I have this moment of reorientation. Where am I? What am I trying to do? How do I do it? Okay, I hit 30. I hit donate now. Then, you know, it puts it in a shopping cart, which I think is kind of strange because I'm not trying to purchase a child. I just want to sponsor one, but you know, whatever. So I hit checkout, and then it's like, now you have to create an account. So I fill out some information, I hit sign in, I fill out more information, I hit continue, I fill out more information, I hit continue, I fill out more information, I hit continue, and this is what my experience is like, right? And if we're truthful and if we're honest, we do this to donors every day. We beat the ever-living snot out of them to get a donation. Whereas if we really love our donors, and we want to treat them well, when we give them a positive experience, we can just make it simpler and easier for them to give. So contrast that experience with something that's, you know, more like this. Right there on the same page that inspires the gift, that communicates the value proposition. I have a contextualized opportunity to respond by giving a gift. Or this, you know, after completing an advocacy action, I can respond by giving a financial contribution. Or this, on the same page that communicates the value of my membership to this organization, I can respond by giving a gift and becoming a member. You know, or this, you know, in response to a timely end-of-year campaign that has all these powerful elements that drive me to want to give, like a countdown clock that creates a sense of urgency and a thermometer that shows that there's, you know, social validation that's taking place and other people are giving, I can respond and I can chip in and I can give my gift as well. So we'll go ahead and look at a couple more examples of how we can apply this formula now to our landing pages. Here's an experiment we did with the Hemorrhage Foundation. Version A is one version of the donation page. Version B, we reduced some of the length friction. We cut down some of the length, and we increased the donation response rate by 138%. Here's another example. Version A, version B, again, the Heritage Foundation. Version A, this is a Become a Member page that explains in exhaustive detail all the different aspects of different levels of membership. Version B says, hey, here they are. Here's the different levels, 25, 50, 100, 250, you know, and 1,000. Which one do you want? And we did an A-B split test. Version B, the simpler page, produced a much higher conversion rate, 67% increase in conversion. So let's look at this last one. And this one I'll go ahead and let everybody vote again. Version A and version B, which one do you believe is most optimized? Is it version A or version B? Okay, the votes are coming in. I've got B's, B, 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 B. Okay, no takers for A. All right, all B's. Unanimous decision. Well, we did an A-B split test. Version A generated a 74% increase in donor conversion. Version B, version A, 274% increase in revenue. So the question is why? If we talk about reducing friction, why is it that this super long, page that scrolls forever, that does the unthinkable, that puts the donation form at the bottom of the page? I mean, you don't even have it above the fold. That's breaking rule number 1, right? How could that page outperform version B that's so much more beautiful? Well, believe it or not, version A actually has less friction. If you look at version B, we've got a menu that goes across the top. That's friction. That's decision friction. I can go to different places and I can basically abort this page. There's different links throughout the content where people can click on different elements of content. That's also friction in the process. There's other, there's a secondary call to action. There's a stay informed. There's another opportunity to sign up for a free PDF. That is more friction in the process. And so what we discovered is that we have to balance the different types of friction and define, what is the thing that I can remove the most. This test was really a radical redesign that we did. Version B was the version that we had tested and optimized over time, and we got incremental gain here, incremental gain there. But eventually, you have to just blow everything up and start all over. In version A, what we focused on is communicating a strong value proposition. So this long-form copy actually lays out the value proposition, why you should become a member, because Rush Limbaugh says, because Wall Street Journal says we're okay, because we're making this kind of impact in the community, and we're doing this kind of thing in the world, and we've got these kind of really good ideas, and as a member, you can expect this and this and this, and so we're just layering upon layering value after value after value, and we don't make the call to action until that person is adequately ready to make a decision. And so that's why, sometimes testing trumps marketing intuition. Even after we look at these things, sometimes we have to continue to test them over and over and over again. So I'm going to run through one more quick one and then we're done. So testing trumps best practices. My entire direct response career, I was taught that if you introduce multiple conflicting calls to action on the same landing page, you will ultimately suppress response. And so, okay, well, let's test that. So in this case, we set up an A/B split test. Version A has a donation form on one side. It has a copy on the other side. Version B is exactly the same. The only thing is in the bottom right-hand corner in the so-called circle of death where nobody's eye is supposed to ever wander, we had a secondary call to action, which is to get a free PDF. And we figured, okay, if somebody requests that free PDF, we have to give them a confirmation page. And on that confirmation page, we give people a secondary opportunity to give. So version A is a one-step, one call to action. Version B, there's two calls to action. And with the secondary call to action, there's a secondary opportunity to give. So we created a secondary conversion pathway. We set up our A/B split test. Every other visitor received version A or version B. Version A had a 2.52% donation conversion rate. Version B, 2.51%. So statistically, exactly the same. And when we looked at the name conversion rate, the number of new email addresses we acquired with that secondary call to action, we had 4.98% name conversion rate. And when we passed them through that secondary opportunity to give, they responded at a much higher rate, 14.16% donation conversion rate. The combination of version B and version B confirmation page resulted in a effective 3.16% donation conversion rate, a 25% increase in giving. By doing something we were taught never, ever, ever to ever do. So these are the kind of things that I get excited about testing and learning new things, and about really overturning some of these long-held best practices, because what we find more often than not is that they're just simply not true. So here's the one thing that I hope that you take away. It's this idea. This is a quote by Peter F. Drucker, and he's a nonprofit. He was the late F Drucker, the nonprofit guru, and he was a management consultant, a really cool guy. Wrote tons of books. He said, adequacy is the enemy of excellence. And I think that that's probably the best definition for optimization that I've ever heard. Adequacy is the enemy of excellence. And so one of the things we need to challenge ourselves to do is to not be satisfied with, with our results. That we can always find ways to optimize it and make it better. And, I interpret a 10% response rate as a 90% non-response rate. And I get excited about what can I do to optimize my message, to optimize the online experience, to make it better so I can get, more of those people to say yes. So let's review the key principles we talked about today. First of all, the best practices aren't enough. When it comes to this stuff, we need to really adopt a rigorous methodology. I submit to you and I encourage you to go and check out Meth Labs. They've got tons of cool resources and research that you can access to do all kinds of neat training opportunities throughout the country and throughout the year. So check out that, and whatever it is, adopt a methodology that you can work from. Keep in mind that optimization is not something that happens on the page; it happens in the mind, right? We need to keep in mind that there's somebody on the other side of the screen that we're trying to communicate with, and instead of trying to, be so focused on our end goal, we need to think about who those people are and how we can best communicate with them in a relevant way that leads them, first of all, meets them where they're at and leads them down a pathway that ultimately leads to that conversion. And finally, the testing trumps best practices. There's so many times where we find that some of these long-held best practices are no best practice at all. And so testing is one of the ways that you can do this. You can turn the web into a living laboratory where you can virtually peer inside of the minds of your donors, of your activists, of your advocates, of your customers, and you can learn about what really motivates them, inspires them, and makes them say yes. And when you test, keep in mind that you may, in fact, often fail. And hopefully you don't fail as bad as the guy who invented the DVD rewinder, but nonetheless, failure is okay. One of the challenges of being a nonprofit organization is that we, we're largely supported by donor dollars, right? And so we have a sense of responsibility and of stewardship to steward those resources appropriately. And oftentimes that causes us to be completely risk averse. But when we completely mitigate or completely absolve ourselves from any risk, we take the biggest risk of all, and that is not trying new things. And so one of the things that we need to think about is how can we fail appropriately? How can we fail upwards? How can we fail forward and learn from failure so that we can discover a new way to win? So everyone, I thank you so much for your time. I know there was a lot of material we went through, and we went over our time a little bit. So I'm not sure if I can stay on for a little bit and answer some questions. But again, we very, very much thank you. If you have any questions that you want to direct to me, my email address is there, tim@nextafter.com. You can also hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn. My blog is there, digitaldonor.com, and you can check out our website, nextafter.com. But again, thank you for your time today. I guess, Lassa, I'll turn it back over to you, and we can go from there.
Well, again, thank you, Tim. That was some really, really good information. I'm going to open up the chat lines in just a second, and so I'm going to unmute everybody, and you'll all be able to ask a question to Tim if you have one. I want to remind you, I'm pasting the link right now for SurveyMonkey into the chat, so if you can just take a minute and go to SurveyMonkey after you get off this call and fill out that survey, that would be very helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody, introduce yourself, say what organization you're from, and then ask a question if you have one. So that's going to be the process. So here we go.
Hey, by the way, folks, I see a couple of people that have posted questions. Will there be a copy of a presentation made available? The answer is yes. We can make that available. Lassa, I'm not sure how we'll make it available, but folks can either get in contact with me directly or to you, or we can post it somewhere too. So however you want to do that.
Yeah, I'll post the presentation to Spark Freedom's website, so people can feel free to jump over there, and I'll make sure to link back to your website on that post as well.
Very good.
So if anybody has any questions, feel free to introduce yourself and then ask the question, and Tim can respond.
Hi, Tim. This is Katie Stikanoffy from the American Legislative Exchange Council, and I was just calling with just a quick question for you about email programs. Is there an email program that you prefer to use? Like, do you like iContact, or what email program should we be looking at that you really found to be successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's certainly a lot of different options out there, and usually the two biggest constraints are going to be the features that you require based on what you're trying to do with your email program, and then the cost structure. So there's some cost structures like MailChimp and Constant Contact. I'm not sure about iContact, but there's a few others that the cost structure is based on how many people you have in your database, not necessarily on how many sends you make. And then there's other more enterprise-level versions of email sending applications like Exact Contact, Silvercross, and Mail. Sorry, not MailChimp, but Blue Hornet, that are more based on the number of emails that you actually send. The enterprise-level solutions like Silverpop and Blue Hornet and Exact Target are probably have more features. So they have more advanced segmentation features. They have more deeper analytic type of features. So it really depends on those two different variables, what you require and what your budget is.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Well, does anybody have any final questions before we end the call? All right. Well, Tim, again, thank you so much for your time, and thank you to everybody who was on the call. I hope you learned a little bit about how to optimize your email, and I hope you took away some very practical steps and ideas and thoughts that you can even begin to apply in the coming weeks as you do your end of year email wrap-ups and sends to donors. And so we'll let you know about our next call that we get planned, and we'll hope to see you on one of those. Thanks for attending, and have a great day.